This is a monstrous story about how the people closest to us can turn out to be betrayers. A 17-year-old girl vanished under strange circumstances after an argument with her mother and stepfather. At first, it all looked as though she had decided to run away from home. But after a detailed investigation, the police uncovered a truth that will send chills down your spine. 17-year-old Bernadette Walker lived in the English city of Peterborough with her family. After high school, she enrolled in a local college to study photography. She planned to build her future career in a creative field. Relatives and friends described her as a shy but very friendly and positive girl. She had many friends, but she spent most of her time communicating with them through social media. Her mother, 37-year-old Sarah, had 9 children. For a long time, she was in a relationship and lived with Scott Walker. Even though they were not married, the woman took his last name for herself and her children. In 2018, Sarah and Scott broke up, but continued to live in the same house. At the same time, Sarah started a new relationship. Scott was Bernadette's stepfather, but she was used to calling him her father. All of this may seem rather strange, but the family couldn't be called dysfunctional. At least they were not struggling financially. On July 17, 2020, Bernadette spent the night at the home of Scott's parents, who had essentially become her grandparents. The next day, Scott picked her up to take her home, and this is where things took a strange turn. According to Scott, they had an argument during the drive. When he pulled the car over, the girl ran out and disappeared. According to his own version of events, Scott hadn't seen her since. On July 21st, 3 days after the disappearance, Bernadette's mother contacted the police. The call was made at 3 in the morning. Sarah reported that she and Scott had last seen her on July 18th. Sometime after Bernadette ran out of the car, she texted her mother saying she didn't want to come home and planned to stay with her ex-boyfriend for a while. According to Sarah, this wasn't the first time her daughter had run away from home, but she always came back. They exchanged a few more messages, but on July 20th, Bernadette stopped responding. That day, at around 1 in the morning, she had texted her mother that she would be home soon. Her older brother decided to contact Bernadette's ex-boyfriend and asked him to tell her to call her mother. However, the young man stated that she had never shown up at his house or even contacted him. The mother wrote to several of Bernadette's friends, but they all insisted the girl was not with them. After this, she decided to call the police. The operator asked Sarah for details about when the girl was last seen. Hearing about the argument with Scott in the car, he asked about the reason for the conflict. Sarah admitted that she had argued with her daughter the day before, which is why Bernadette had decided to stay at Scott's parents' house. When the stepfather came to pick her up, he asked Bernadette to apologize to her mother. However, the girl said she wasn't going home, got out of the car and ran away. Scott tried to catch her but couldn't. This story seemed very strange to the operator, but the police found no reason for a serious investigation. It all looked as though the girl was in no danger and would eventually return home. But soon, the case was handed over to another detective. He was seriously alarmed by the very strange set of facts. Police searched Bernadette's home and also spoke with Scott. Within a few days, it became known that the homicide division had taken an interest in the case. During a search of the girl's room, police found her personal diary, which made them look at the case from a completely different angle. Shortly before her disappearance, Bernadette wrote that she had argued with her mother and also detailed the reasons for the fight. That day, she had decided to tell her mother a horrifying truth. Scott had been molesting and abusing her for the past 7 years. The girl also added that he had installed hidden cameras in the bathroom and her bedroom. Bernadette had hoped her mother would help her, but she only called her daughter a liar and began to threaten her so she wouldn't dare go to the police. Because of this argument, Bernadette decided to spend the night at her grandparents' house. The fact that it was Scott who came to pick her up the next day seemed very strange to the police. Detectives interrogated Scott, and he did not deny installing cameras in the bathroom. However, his explanation raised even more questions. He claimed he did it because Bernadette was hiding candy wrappers there, and he wanted to catch her in the act. Naturally, the police didn't believe this and began to dig deeper. By checking information on Scott's smartphone, they established another alarming fact. The man's phone had been turned off for 90 minutes right after he picked Bernadette up from his parents' house. As soon as his smartphone was turned back on, Scott called Sarah. The police didn't have a recording of the conversation, which lasted 9 minutes. But all of the above was already enough to form a very grim hypothesis. A very horrifying theory began to form. Scott could have killed Bernadette right after he picked her up. For the next 90 minutes, he could have been hiding her body, having turned off his phone in case the police later tracked his location on that day. Then he called Sarah, told her what happened, and asked for her help in covering up her daughter's murder. The detectives understood that if this theory was correct, the girl's mother almost certainly knew the truth and had helped him. While the police were working on this grim version of events, Sarah and Scott were not sitting idly by. The mother called on the public to help find her daughter, handing out and posting flyers. Scott wrote a touching post on social media, urging Bernadette to get in touch and say that she was okay. He also added that the whole family was worried and loved her. 7 weeks after Bernadette's disappearance, the police announced that the case had been reclassified. It was now being treated as a murder without a body. Such cases are extremely rare, as it is very difficult to prove someone's guilt without a body. However, the detectives believed the girl was no longer alive. Immediately after reclassifying the case, they arrested Scott first, and then Sarah. But where did all those messages that Bernadette had supposedly sent to her friends and mother after her disappearance come from? By that point, the police already had an answer. They had tracked the movements of her smartphone and concluded that since the day of her disappearance, the phone had been in the vicinity of a self-storage facility. By examining the geolocation data of Sarah's and Scott's smartphones, the police determined that they had also repeatedly visited that location within 2 days of Bernadette's disappearance. Thus, it all looked as though they were the ones sending messages from her phone. This theory was supported by another fact. One of Bernadette's friends, who had received messages from her account, shared his suspicions with the police. According to him, the writing style was completely different, and he had suspected something was wrong from the beginning. With all this information in hand, the police charged Scott and Sarah with perverting the course of justice. Soon a murder charge was also added against Scott. The man denied his guilt and insisted that the girl had indeed run away from his car. However, he could not tell the police the exact location where this happened. As for Sarah, she turned out to be much more cooperative. When detectives laid out the evidence they had and told her the prison sentence she was facing, the woman began to talk. Sarah admitted to sending messages from her daughter's phone and accounts. On the day of Bernadette's disappearance, Scott had called her and demanded her help in covering his tracks. However, the woman insisted that he had not told her about the murder. She only said that he had threatened her and her new lover with violence if she refused to help. Sarah began to stick to the version that she had only helped the murderer out of fear for her own life. In addition, detectives uncovered another strange detail. After her daughter's disappearance, Sarah had searched on Google how to track a mobile phone. This indicated that she was making a serious effort to conceal the truth. Despite the confession, the detectives still had no idea where Bernadette's body was. Because Scott had turned off his phone, they couldn't even narrow down a search area. Scott himself, of course, was in no hurry to share this information, as it would confirm his guilt. But he could not escape punishment. On September 10, 2021, the final court hearing took place, and Scott Walker was found guilty of the murder of Bernadette. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole no earlier than 32 years. It is worth clarifying one point here. In Britain, there is a law that prohibits a criminal from applying for parole if they have been convicted of murder but the victim's body has not been found. In other words, Scott can only hope to get out of prison if he reveals the location where he hid Bernadette's body. As for Sarah, she received 6 years in prison for perverting the course of justice. This sentence outraged many people, as the woman had, without a hint of conscience, covered for her own daughter's murderer. But the court could not impose a harsher sentence, as they had no evidence to indicate that Sarah actually knew about the murder, however obvious it may seem. The police continue to search the areas where Scott might have hidden the girl's body, and sooner or later, she may be found. This story shows, once again, that even the person closest to you can betray you in such a monstrous way. It's hard to believe that a mother could do this to her own daughter, but reality is inescapable. As for Scott, he deserves to spend the rest of his life in prison. This cowardly man decided to kill the girl who called him her father, just to hide his own dirty deeds. Take care, and thank you for watching.